Good morning, Katie here at Granny's Legacy, here to help you do a little tutorial on sewing a pretty little zipper clutch. For those of you in our Pretty Little Things Club, this is our April 2021 project called the Pretty Little Bloom Clutch. And we just thought we would do a little tutorial on this one as we don't traditionally do sewing projects that require things like zippers. So since this is something that may be new to some, we wanted to make sure that we showed you it really is simple and not to be fearful of zippers. So let's get started. The first thing we'll go over is what you will need to complete the project. So you will need a front panel for your project, a piece for the back of your project, which is this one, and two pieces for the lining for your project, which is this one. And all of these pieces are the exact same size. In your Pretty Little Things kit, the pieces you received will be 6.5 by 10.5. To make a little bit more room for our zipper, I did go ahead and square all of mine up to 6 by 10. You may wish to do that. If you don't, that's fine too. But I think as we sew, you'll see why that extra 1/4 inch on each side made a little bit of a difference. So the first thing we'll need to do is take one of our lining pieces, and then we're going to take our zipper. And it is top side up, so the pull will be on the top. And I'm going to go ahead and position that on top of my background, or my lining piece. This is the lining. On top of the lining piece, just centered. So your zipper, if you trim it up, it'll hang over each side about a 1/4 inch. If you opt not to square up your pieces and just leave them at the 6.5 by 10.5, it'll be even on both sides. But I did square mine up because I wanted that little bit of extra wiggle room to work with. So, and I am lining the zipper up with the top of my lining piece. And the zipper is right side up, or the pull side. So the pull should be towards you. Then the next step is we're going to take our pretty front piece that we worked hard to stitch beautifully, and we are going to position that on top of this. So we're making a zipper sandwich, if you think of it that way. And we're just going to line up our lining piece and our front piece so that all of our sides are even and match. And now we're going to pin. I like these cool pins that we carry. They're nice. They have a nice little head to grip onto. They're super thin, and the heads won't melt if you were to need to iron. And then I'm going to flip this a little bit so I can pin easier. And we are just going to add pins. And when I pin, I don't know about you, but I like to put a pin at each end and then pin in the middle. I feel like it just keeps everything together nicer. And the pull here on your zipper creates some weird bulk. And it's going to be really hard to pin there, so we're just not going to pin that. We'll come back to that later. We're not going to worry about sewing that part. So we're going to start down a couple inches with our pins. Can you see all right, Mom? Is this?
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay. And I like to err on the side of using too many pins rather than not enough, because the zipper is poly and it is a little bit slippery inside my sandwich. So, okay. So now we are ready to sew.
Do you want to show the other side?
Yeah, I do. So we have your lining fabric, your zipper sandwiched in between, and your front. So essentially, if you turn it over, you can always check and you'll be able to see that your front piece, if you were to fold it back pretending it was sewed, you'll be able to see your zipper and everything is perfect. You can just check. So now we're gonna head to the sewing machine. The one thing you're gonna want to make sure that you have for this project is a zipper foot. The reason being is the zipper, I'll give Mom a second here to readjust and you can envision it. The zipper creates, where those teeth are, it creates an extra bulk. So what the zipper does is it just scoots along right alongside of that bulk of the zipper. And so it makes it easy to sew with that funky bulk. So now we are going to sew. So I have my needle, I moved my needle over so it's on the left side of my foot. And and if the needle were on the right, it would do absolutely nothing because it'd just be stitching on the edge of your fabric. And then I'm going to get ready. And I am simply going to sew, oh, my bobbin winder's on. And I am going to make a couple backup stitches here.
So you're not starting on the...
I am not starting on the end because we have that zipper bulk. I'm starting in about 2 inches, just right before my first pin. Yep. And then we're just gonna, and I am sewing over my pins. I am going slowly, and I have really fine pins. And I think if I were to go fast or have really heavy pins, I definitely would not sew over them. But because the zipper is a little bit slippery in there, I just want to make sure that everything holds together right. So I am leaving my pins in. And now when we get to the end here, I'm just going to kind of hold this. I'm sorry if my fingers are in the way. I'll try to go off to the side a little bit. And then we are going to back up here too, or reverse or lock. I think they call that a lock stitch. And then I'm going to take my pins out because we're done with those for a moment. And we're going to open it up and make sure it looks right. I'd say that looks pretty darn good. And now, as you remember, this part is not sewed. So what we're going to do to fix that is we are just going to open our zipper a little ways so that bulk is gone. Then we're going to fold it back shut, go back to our machine, and notice I did flip it over a little bit. And we're just gonna make up for that. Mine did slip a little bit, but I think I'll be okay as long as I keep my seam allowance even. Then we're gonna do a locking stitch at the end. And, going to grab my scissor and trim my threads because I really don't like to have messy threads. We're good there. And then we're gonna flip her open, and I'd say that looks pretty good. So then we're gonna shut our zipper, and we're gonna do the same thing again. So we're going to take a piece of our lining fabric and place it down. And then we are going to position our bag front on top of it, just as we did before. And I just like to make sure that my edges are lined up with nice and square. And then our bag, the backing for our bag, so this will be the piece that goes on the back, will go right there. And then we are going to pin that just as we did before. So this time my zipper is down here, my zipper pull, but I am still going to go ahead and put a pin on each end because that's, like my daughter would say, that's how I roll. And then I'm gonna go ahead and pin every couple inches just to keep everything held together nicely. Oh, I'm using more pins than I did last time. That's okay. I used to teach classes on piecing, and I always would say pin, pin, pin. You'll thank yourself later. This one looks like it slipped. My zipper slipped down a little bit, so we're just going to readjust that a little. I'm sorry if my hands are in the way. And there we go. So my zipper bulk is down here, so I'm not going to worry. I'm only going to worry about stitching to this pin or till when it starts feeling awkward to sew. You might, you'll notice that your sewing machine starts to feel funny when you get too close to that zipper. So we're going to go back to our machine. And And this time we're starting on the edge because we're on the opposite side, so our zipper is at the bottom. So I'm just gonna slide my machine thread under there. And once again, we're gonna do a little bit of a locking stitch. It just holds everything together on the ends nicely. It's not wanting to grab
You
my
might
zipper.
have to take that pin out.
Let's start over here. Always listen to your mom. Here we go. And we're just gonna guide that right through there with our needle on the left side of our zipper foot. Nice and evenly, and now it's starting to get funny and I'm to my last pin. This is where that zipper bulk is, so we're just going to back up and do a little locking stitch. And I always have to set my machine to needle down. I don't know why it's not doing that. Okay. Then we're going to remove our pins as we did before. We're going to open it up and look at that. A beautiful zipper. However, we need to finish sewing this. We can't get too excited. So we're gonna open our zipper back up, fold it back together, and I really like to put one pin in this so it doesn't happen what happened last time to me. I'm gonna put one pin, take it back to my machine, and I like to overlap my stitching about an inch, so I'm starting kind of a little bit before I stopped the last time, just so you have a nice seamless joint. And then we're just gonna stitch to the end, and I'm sorry if you're getting a great view of my hands. There we go. And back stitch a little bit just to secure it, and then open it up. And you have a beautiful zipper. Now, it doesn't quite look like a bag yet. Now we're gonna do a little bit of ironing just because we wanna make sure everything looks nice. I think there's a couple things that really make your work look professional or seem professional. And one is, on bags, is the time that you take to do a little extra pressing. And then also the time you take to do top stitching. Top stitching, I feel, is what really sets things off nicely. So people always ask what kind of iron we use. This one is just one that we happen to have at the office. When one breaks, we just go buy another one. It's not something we're paid to use or necessarily would even recommend. It's just what we have. So and then I am using a little bit of steam, and I'm trying to stay away from my embroidery work just a little bit because I want to make sure that that stays nice. And then I'm just going to press the back nicely so that everything is positioned well with your zipper and your zipper lays nice and flat. There we go. Now for the top stitching. So what I'm going to do is go back to my sewing machine. And I'm just going to start, I'm going to move my needle all the way to the right. So my needle is moving on the other side of the zipper foot. You could switch to a 1/4 inch foot or something like that now if you wanted to, but I'm just going to continue using this because it's what's on my machine. And then I'm going to back stitch a little bit, and that just keeps those ends from coming undone. And then I'm just going to take my time so that my stitching line is nice and even and neat. And I'm just making a cute little top stitch. And this really will make your project look finished and just store-bought and professional.
Oftentimes for a top stitch, you can always lengthen your stitch too.
Yeah. Or sometimes if I'm getting really fancy, which I'm not gonna do in the video today because I'm trying to keep it basic. If I'm getting really fancy and if I have my walking foot on, I'll line it up with like, this is like a 1/4 inch. I'll do an 1/8 inch just right under this one. So it has 2 lines next to each other. Yeah, just go wild. I gotta go on a little bit more. And then I'm gonna back stitch a little bit and then front stitch. And I have my finger in there so it goes nice and straight. Perfect. And then I lost my scissor. There it is. I'm going to take 3 seconds and trim all of my strings or my threads. Looks good. Okay. Now we are going to get ready to assemble our bag. So this looks kind of goofy, but what we are going to do is bring the top of your project and the back of your project together like this. And we are going to nest the zipper pieces towards, so we have the outside of your bag on the right here and the inside of your bag on the left. So the zipper pieces are going to nest towards your inside or your lining. And I'm just going to take and line up my top stitching and the zipper. I don't know if you can zoom in, Mom, but I just want to make sure that the zipper is lined up really nicely right here, because this is...
1 second, it's having trouble.
That's
focusing.
okay.
There we go. Okay.
We just want to, before we pin, we're bringing together, we just want to make sure that our zipper is going to line up beautifully. So we're going to take and bring that together and nest it. I shouldn't say nest, because nest would imply that one seam goes one way and one goes the other. We're going to want them both to go the same way towards the lining. The zipper goes towards the lining, the zipper bulk. And so I'm going to put a pin there and a pin right after the zipper. And this will just help your machine feed it in nicely and neatly without any slipping. And then we're just going to take and pin all the way around. My nose is itchy. And once again, I like to pin both ends and then in the middle, and that'll help keep everything nice and square. And so then I'm going to bring this together. And then I'm going to put one pin in the middle. Once again, I'm sorry if you're getting all hands here.
Actually, I think they're getting dizzy for me going in and out.
And I'm gonna just kind of and I think Mom actually taught me about pinning, doing the ends first and then the middle and then working your way to the middle, because how frustrating it is when you're pinning something and you get to the end and realize you're too short or too long, and then you have to go back and repin. But if you do your ends and your middle first and then pin in between, you will never have that issue. So now we are back to where we need to set this zipper so that we can pin to there. So making sure the zipper is nice and lined up right there.
Show it again, please.
Yep. So I'm putting it to my front and my lining together, and then I just open it up with my fingers I caught myself. Back up a little bit. The one thing you want to make sure you do at this point is open your zipper. Okay? So when you start pinning, make sure you open your zipper. At least halfway, make sure your zipper is open. Okay? If there's one thing you remember from this video, it's make sure you open your zipper before you start pinning around the edge. If you do not open your zipper, you will have to rip because you will not be able to turn your bag. So make sure
I have done that, and I have kind of wiggled and wiggled and wiggled.
Make sure your zipper is open. You'll thank me later. And then we're going to go back to where I was before, and we're going to make sure that this is lined up.
I'm having a hard time finding it. Just a second. You have a really bad cameraman today. I'm sorry. All right. There you go.
Yep. So we're going back and we're just going to fold or align our side seam right here where the zipper is. And we want to make sure that the zippers are lined up. That way, when you go to turn your bag, it's nice and even. So I'm just going to pin there and pin on each side of the zipper. And then pin between it. And the other thing I forgot to talk about, and I'll show you here in a second once we get all the way around. So now we're going to line up this next seam going this way and put a pin at the end. And then a couple pins in the middle. And then we're going to pin this side. And put one about in the middle. And if you do this method with quilt borders, I'll give you maybe a little lesson while you're watching me pin. When I put borders on quilts, I always mark the center of the side of my quilt and the center on my border. And then I lay my border on my quilt and put a pin in the middle and then a pin on each edge, and then just work it all in between. And that way you know you have a nice even, your border won't be lettucey then. So that's my little sidebar there. And now I'm going to pin in this. My last pin, I promise. So the last thing that I forgot to talk about is you will need to leave a hole for turning. So I always leave mine in the bottom of the lining. So the side that's lining to lining, I'm going to take this pin out, and I always forget to leave a hole. So my signal for leaving a hole is I put 2 pins in where I want the hole to be. That way when I'm sewing around, and I say, Katie, why the heck are there 2 pins here? And then I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. That's my signal that I have to stop because this is going to be my turning hole. So you want to make sure you leave a turning hole. And then I am going to change the feet on my machine right now to a walking foot. And that's just because I'm just going to be going around the edge, and I'm going to have a little bit of zipper bulk, and walking foots work really well with that little bit of extra bulk. So this is just the walking foot that came with my machine. Most machines come with them. It's probably my favorite thing when it comes to sewing would be a walking foot. Would be one of my top things that I would say people need. So I'm going to start at my first double pin. And I am doing a 1/4 inch seam. And I'm going to take these pins out just because it's going to be a nightmare with 2 of them. So I'm going to take my 2 pins out. And then do a locking stitch. That's just because when you go and start turning, there will be a little bit of stress on that seam right there when you turn. And when I get to the corner, just gonna pivot. Oh, and you just go a little bit further. And then pivot. And my machine actually has a little mark on it where it's a 1/4 inch from the edge.
Okay, I see you are not removing your pins. If it were myself, I would remove my pins as I get to them.
And now here, I'm sorry, I have to move my fingers up a little bit just because I'm going to slow down when I go over this zipper, because if I were to break a needle on this project, it would be when I were to go over the zipper. So I'm going to slow down a little bit, and then And the reason I'm sewing over my pins is because, first of all, I am sewing at kind of an awkward angle so that the camera can see what I'm doing. And so I don't have as much control over my fabric. I can't put my hands up there to really guide. So that's primarily why I'm sewing over my pins. Oh, can't go that fast, okay. And once, you know your machine and what your machine is capable of. This machine has been with me for about 20 years, so we're kind of buds. But you kind of get to feel for, what you can and cannot do with your machine. So. And then once again, I'm getting to my zipper because I'm going to slow down just because there's going to be one place, it's just really bulky, and if there's going to be one place where my machine were going to do goofy things or break a needle, it would be at the zipper. And then here I come up with like, oh my goodness, Katie, why are there 2 pins? Oh yeah, that's right. That's because that's my turning hole. I've made it far enough. And then I'm going to do a little back stitch because once again, this will have a little bit of stress right here when I go to turn my bag. I'm going to take it out. Remove all my pins that I should have probably been taking out all along. And before I go any further, I'm going to take, this scissors is really sharp, and I'm going to snip the extra zipper bulk out of the seam. And if you remembered at the beginning, I told you that I had trimmed down my, my pieces so that my zipper would hang over a little bit. If you did not trim down, you more than likely will not have any extra zipper bulk to trim off. So now, I have another hot tip for you.
So if you would have sewn all the way around, could you just turn it in the zipper part, or do you?
No.
You cannot do that.
No. Because you can't get to the zipper.
Frequently asked questions.
Yeah, you can't get to the zipper. If you sew all the way around, you can't get to the zipper. Okay, so now this is one extra step that I like to do. This is one of those things that I say that will make it look super professional. And that is, I press this. And it might seem weird because this is the inside of your bag. And then I just take and I press this seam open, and you will see why in a minute. All the way around, I'm just gonna press. You don't have to do both sides, just one side. Press that open. And like I said, I've made a lot of bags in my past. And these are just some of the little tricks that just make it look professional and crisp and amazing. So, and I'm getting a free facial, like Mom would say, at the same time, which as I begin to notice that I'm aging, I can really appreciate. And you may think this is nuts, but you'll see in a minute while I'm pressing the inside of my bag. Mom, do you know why I'm pressing the inside of my bag? Okay, and now we're getting to the turn hole. And so I am going to just make sure that I press like a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Just pretend it was sewed and keep pressing. And I'm actually going to press both sides right here. So I'm going to press both sides of that turn hole open. See, the reason we did a video tutorial is some of this is really hard to write in a pattern. So, and I've made it all the way around. So now, in my craziness, we are going to take, and before I do that, I'm gonna cut a little bit extra bulk away from the corners. And you might have to fold back where I just ironed. Could probably do this before you ironed and it'd be better, but I'm just getting rid of the extra bulk, and this will just help your corners turn super, super crisply. Then we find our turn hole and we just start turning our bag. Or opening, I guess, is a more appropriate word for it. Oh, here comes the zipper. Here it comes. Ah, look at that! Got it? There's the zipper. My inside is all tucked in there. I'm sorry, I know I'm making everybody dizzy. I'm just gonna give it a little flick and my lining will go inside of it. And I have to still sew that shut, that little spot in my lining, but I just wanna make sure I can get everything nice and square and tucked aside neatly. And there's my zipper. Looks super nice. My other side of the zipper looks super nice. And then I'm gonna kind of sneak my lining back out. And you will want to take a needle and thread at this point. I'm not going to do this for video length purposes. And you'll want to neatly sew this shut, your opening. And look at that, because we ironed it, look at that, it's super easy to sew shut because we ironed it. It lines up. So just take a needle and thread and whip stitch that shut. And then we're going to take and shut our zipper, and look how nice that looks. And the reason why we ironed, remember we went all the way around the outside and ironed, is because look at how nice and sharp and crisp these side seams are because you did that ironing. It looks amazing. I didn't quite get this poked out all the way. So I'm gonna get my finger in there, get that little corner out neatly. There we go. And there you have it, a cute little bloom clutch. So thank you so much for stitching along with us here today, and we hope you have fun. Before I go here, a couple ideas. I have made a few of these for my girls. I have a 3.5-year-old and an almost 7-year-old, and I made one that was about twice the size for my 7-year-old for when we travel, to put her headbands and her hair stuff in. And I used like, I'll call it like almost a raincoat type material, something that had a little bit of plasticky on the inside and outside. So it's more of a cosmetics bag. And I made one that was smaller, like almost this square, for my littlest to keep her little Legos in that she likes to travel with. So the possibilities are endless for this little pouch. So there you have it. Have a good day.